this new censorship culture. Why? Well, basically, so I wrote a book called Tip of the Pyramid, Cultivating Community Cultural Capital. I chronicle a little bit of it, but I didn't want to write the end-all be-all. Why? Because it wasn't over. That was just that cycle of bans. And clearly, it's clear that the folks that want to keep books out of our families' hands have decades to plan, and they do. And they've got resources to engender that. So that everything we used before is not going to work, because it seems that they've intentionally come up with ways to defy that. And when you had a state representative, I think, emotionally I keep forgetting his last name because I don't want him to know the history. But you had that Texas rep who banned 800 books at a shot. It was a whole new era. And what I'll add to preface how we're going to approach this is that so I chronicle a little bit of the banning of ethnic studies in Arizona. When I say a little bit, why? It was actually the people of Tucson that suffered the brunt of it and overturned that law. And they were belly of beast, they did all the heroes' work. That's one thing. However, we all banded together and stopped the banning of Mexican American studies. And what's happened since then is that the folks that want to silence our community will never ban Mexican American studies again. Why? Because we schooled them, we won, and if they were to do that directly again, we'd win again. So they're not going to do it again. Instead, they've come up with a new way. If you look at those 800 books that were on that list, you had Spanish surname writers, some were about queer themes. If your book had Black Lives Matter in the title, it was banned. And then we all don't, we think it's one group and not the other, we're not coming together. And it didn't say, oh, what type of books? Then it came up with the critical race theory. Last thing I want to say to mention this, we're throwing a lot of ideas at you because there's a lot coming at us. And this was clear when it was in April of last year, when we did a banned book caravan to Austin. And we had buses coming from San Antonio, Houston to Austin. We were using some of the tactics from before, not all of them, but we were watching what was happening. I mentioned this then because the week after that, Roe versus Wade was overturned. And then of course, my point is this: there's 100 fires being lit, and everything we did before will not work again because the intention is to destabilize the community and to thwart all those past actions. However, not here to depress you. This is the depressing part. Here's the depressing part. As we said in the earlier version of this discussion, we have the power. They may write the laws, we write the books. We have powers in our communities. Once we read the book, they can't ban it. And additionally, we are more exciting and smarter than those who want to silence us. And that's what this panel is about. So the politics is moving it from direct contact with Austin, which we should not abandon, but those halls of power have been taken over. Texas Senate, Texas House of Representatives, Lieutenant Governor, governorship, been taken over by folks that can pass laws and undo work we've done in one session. On the flip side, we can start family libraries, continue underground libraries, we can fund teachers to get books, we can spread this knowledge. The Latino bookstore in San Antonio is creating lesson plans to give away. Middle school, high school, and grammar school as well. If you're on the list for that, if you want the lesson plans, you will get the lesson plans, and that includes teacher visit. So today we're going to have some of the practitioners, the writers, whose work is basically empowering our gente and neighborhoods, but also they're not going to directly maybe talk about the way it goes around the laws being imposed, but they do. Why? Because it engages community. It engages story. And really, it makes reading fun and exciting. So we're going to have some of the folks that are in publishing, some of the folks that are in the book, and they're going to come up with different ways to empower you. I'm with Nuestra Palabra, Latino writers having their say. We're happy to serve with live reading, so you should have gotten our lineup for our reading here in Houston. It features several writers. Cristina Garcia just got a Genius MacArthur grant. She teaches at the University of Houston, PhD in creative writing in Spanish. That's pretty unique, actually. We're featuring her in August. In July, Dr. Richard Tapia from Rice University, who wrote about the lack of support for minorities in the sciences. And then in September, more free books, because we want to give free books away. Nuestra Palabra got a big read grant. So we're focusing on the book Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. We're going to be giving away 400 copies of the book. So if you got 499 friends, and they want free books, we'll have a big event in September. And then October, Sana Cisneros is coming to do a fundraiser for Nuestra Palabra. So we're looking forward to that, including visual artist Chris Hernandez, who's going to create a piece for freedom of speech as well. But we also have the radio show, which we're actually going to transmit this as well. And we air it on fox26houston.com. It airs on 90.1 FM KPFT every Tuesday. We also have podcasts. We want to serve it that way as well. So that's kind of the overview. We do want, of course, some dialogue. But let me begin with one of our first presenters. I got to hear them earlier. I could hear everything you said before. You can say the exact same thing again, because it sounds different each time. And then what I'm excited about too is that we get to host them at the Latino Bookstore coming up in September. And as I mentioned earlier, and I think you should tell your friends as well, they're giving away the book online. The hard copies are reasonably priced. And I'd like the geniuses behind The Bard in the Borderlands, Volume 1, Catherine Gillen, Adriana Santos, and Catherine Gormero Santos to come up and blow our minds.
Thank you, Tony, for the amazing work you do. Appreciate you so much. Before we get started, I'm just going to pull up the book itself on the website so that you can see how to access it.
Google The Bard in the Borderlands, and it's on Pressbooks, which is the online platform.
So this is our publisher is at Arizona State University, the Arizona Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies, and they believe that knowledge should not live behind a paywall. And so they've generously made our book available as an open access text. So anything you hear about today, you could easily integrate into your classroom. And the three of us as editors have written introductions to this tradition that we'll tell you about, and to each of the plays that we hope would give you and your students or whomever you know and their students some background information. So,
Can we start?
right now.
Do you want to play this first or last?
Sure.
Okay. So we just wanted to mix it up a little bit for the second time around and show you some of the work that students are doing to adapt Shakespeare, which is probably the most required author, right, in maybe 9th, 10th, 11th, high school, most likely. And so this is something that students are doing in Kate's classroom. She teaches an intersectional Shakespeare class, and the students wrote, you want to actually talk about it?
Sure.
Yeah, we can go ahead and watch it in a second, but these students were part of a national project called the Qualities of Mercy Project, in which students adapted scenes from The Merchant of Venice within their local context. And so, as you'll see, my students, it was a class project, but then some of the students who were the actors decided to set it on the south side of San Antonio, where we're located. And so the Shylock figure is a recent and undocumented immigrant who runs a payday loan sort of like operation. So maybe we'll show you that. We wanted to really just give you all a sense of what this looks like when students are given the opportunity to really remake kind of canonical white-centric literature in ways that they, want to. So yeah, go ahead. Will that work?
You can trust it very good.
Antonio García.
So,
Antonio es un buen señor.
man, that's yeah, they're a good person. Have you heard anything contrary?
What? No. What I meant to say he's a good man is that he has enough money to guarantee the loan. But his investments are uncertain right now. I've heard Cheeseman that he's under investigation for tax fraud. And with the IRS snooping around, I'm pretty sure his assets, if not frozen, are surely tucked away. But even so, he's rich enough to guarantee the payment. 530,000. Yeah, I think it's a knowledgeable thing.
I can assure you, they're good.
I know he is, but at least they told Antonio before I didn't use the money.
Oh, no, I understand. We can talk over that. You should be used to it. Wait a minute.
Also, I'll be civil with you, but you won't catch me drinking with you. Hablando del diablo, que tiene la cara como los que te roban y después regresan a pedirte un favor. Uno me cae mal. Pendejo con su dinero y luego por enojar en la frente ni quiere hablar español del país. Se cree un gringo con sus pinches papeles y es un cabrón por su propia raza. Yo más pendejo si le presto el dinero.
Hey, what's going on?
I don't think I know all that much, but I have a friend at another banking company who might be able to give me this. Señor Antonio, ¿cómo está?
Charlotte, you know I don't like into these quick loan companies. There are legitimate things I can do to that. I need to help out my amigo here. How much do you ask?
Oh, sí, me dijo que 530?
Yeah, for the last months.
Yes, 3 months. I can count. Look at this one, Antonio. How can I be sure that you'll pay me back when you don't even think I have a legitimate business? You think that my high interest rates make my business a scam compared to a bank?
Lending places are out to get people in debt. Your type of interest rates, banks, they help.
Well, that's good to know. I'm pretty sure even you're participating. ¿Cuántas clases amistades largas? You really feel that way.
Yeah, but banks not charge these rates.
The money can be met, pero entiende que es un interés. Te presto dinero, después no lo pagas. And in the future, I can loan you money again. Y lo inviertes in something to make your own money. Y así pagas tu deuda con el gobierno.
So, a shady lending company is trying to tell me how to be right with the American government.
So, los 530 brand businesses. Y hechos
Where is the dinero?
Señor Antonio, ha ofendido mi compañía. My reputation in the community. Y nunca he dicho nada porque nosotros ya estamos acostumbrados. Me ha dicho mojado, un perro de la calle y hasta criminal. But now that your friend here can go to a fancy little bank, vienes y le pides dinero a este mojado. Te pregunto, ¿un mojado tiene este tipo de dinero? Or maybe I should be agradecido. Say, gracias, señor Antonio, for spitting on me, insulting me, and calling me an illegal. Here, te presto dinero con mucho gusto.
Look, an illegal company is trying to tell me how to be right with the American law. He thinks he's helping people by lending out money, but really, he scams the government and the American people with all that interest he gets back. He's the definition of a fraud.
Gracias, señor Antonio. I want to help you and build a business relationship. Y para olvidar el pasado de Wednesday, Antonio no me dijo, found interest.
Sounds good.
Para que no digan que tengo mala sangre, we'll make it official. Y si no me pagan mi dinero within 3 months, yeah, te corto la lengua. And that way I'll be sure you'll never speak about me or our people again.
I'll sign, and I'll even say mojados are decent people.
Whoa, man. You don't got to sign all that. I'm not that hard up.
Well, don't worry about it. 2 months, a month before the loan is due, I expect to have all the assets unfrozen, and I'll begin to pay their money back in full.
Ay, Dios mío, ¿qué tipo de hombres son estos? que ellos solitos think that their citizenship makes them better than anybody else from a different background. Pero su boca, y que fuera tan buena como la lengua de vaca para hacer una pinche barbacoa. Hurry up, Charlotte, I'm ready to sign. You know what? Let's meet again at the notario. I'll set up the necessary paperwork and we can finish up. But right now, I have some more to do. Hurry up, amigo. Smart man. You would have thought he was an American.
I don't know. Seems kind of fishy.
I have the American law on my side. I'll help you run in no time.
So as you can see, the students in that particular exercise were able to really take their own critical consciousness to what they were learning about Shakespeare, and obviously putting it in studying in San Antonio and using their bilingual capabilities to get across some really important themes about immigration, about exploitation. So what we want to do is give students opportunities to do more of this by publishing works of what we call Borderlands Shakespeare, where Chicanx, Latinx, Indigenous primarily playwrights are rewriting, speaking back to Shakespeare through adaptation and appropriation that's set in Borderlands contexts. So we've got some examples from the Texas-Mexico border, New Mexico, Arizona, California, and what we're seeing is the integration of Shakespearean themes with the myths, the folklore, the culture, the music of the border. We see indigenous spirituality represented, a lot of history and politics, obviously, integrated in there. Really both acknowledging like Shakespeare and Shakespeare's works as a tool of colonialism, but then also using that to critique and talk back to some of those contexts as you saw in the video. Appropriating Shakespeare in this way allows local communities to do something really interesting and call attention to issues of importance to them. All of the plays that we found and have compiled in this 3-volume text, Bard in the Borderlands, are really written in and with community. A lot of them are performed at like festivals or in community contexts that are accessible to the communities that they're in, sometimes in educational contexts.
So
Yeah, and so we don't need to go through the whole slide, but one thing that we often stress when we're teaching the plays that are collected in the anthology is their indebtedness to and engagement with teatro. And some of the plays explicitly engage with the teatro campesino tradition. Others are sort of more generally influenced by the community theater that's really like theater of and for the people, and theater that works toward activist aims and in the interests of liberation. And so many of the plays that we have are really doing that work and thinking through like what pressing community issues are at this particular time and how they can think through those issues kind of with Shakespeare, but also with a whole range of thinkers and artists in the region as well.
we thought we would highlight 2 examples from the first volume. The first volume focuses on Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet appropriations. These are by far the most adapted by Borderlands artists, though volumes 2 and 3 show the wide range across the Shakespeare's body of work. But we wanted to put these up first because Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet are most frequently taught in high schools and are also in college syllabi as well. So the first Romeo and Juliet example that we want to share a bit of of our community theater in 2018, and again emerges from a community context, set and staged in the Rio Grande Valley, and it explores themes that are relevant to its history but also to its present. Romeo's family owns an irrigation company. He is mixed race, and Juliet's family are Mexican American farm workers. And so the division between their families is really one of a division about who owns the land and who controls the resources of that land. And as Kate was mentioning, there's an acto built into this play that's about the farm working community. So it's clearly drawing on the teatro campesino. It's multilingual in the sense that the characters speak in Spanish, English, and Spanglish, and it brings in several genres of music as well as indigenous imagery and spiritual traditions. And Lupe's name obviously comes from the Virgen de Guadalupe.
Yes, go. So, as you saw in the video, right, students are really excited about these plays in many cases and are looking forward to opportunities to create their own works. So I really enjoyed using Borderland Shakespeare, having students read sometimes plays, sometimes scenes from the plays, to really think about like how they can engage with a range of canonical literary texts, and also sometimes speak back to them and create their own works. So we're not necessarily saying, right, that everyone, like, we don't care particularly if people teach Shakespeare, right? But we're often asked to teach Shakespeare in various contexts. And so one way of like helping students, one, both kind of like find an entry point into those texts, but also just do their own work and engage with Mexican American literature and culture, as well as other traditions. Like there's a big Black tradition of speaking back to Shakespeare, especially with plays like Othello, for example. We've already found that these Borderland Shakespeare plays and other adaptations and preparations were really helpful for doing that work with students. So some things that we found helpful to discuss in this in classrooms are like the ways that Borderlands genres and art forms and other kind of ways of knowing and viewing the world show up in the plays. We found that students really enjoy talking about the language in the plays because there's such a mix, right? Like you have Shakespeare's English, you have more modern English, you have more, modern English in different contexts, you have Spanish, you have Spanglish, and different forms of Spanish. Sometimes it's like old Castilian Spanish, Spain Spanish, or often, right, it's the Spanish spoken in communities in the Borderlands. And so students have engaged with that in helping them kind of like validate their own language practices as well, and thinking about like their own really like, linguistic skill and virtuosity in some cases. We've also had a lot of success kind of just thinking about like community-based knowledges, right? And the fact that these plays come from communities, what knowledges students possess in their communities, what knowledges like their families possess, and how they can kind of like use that, in the classroom, but also for other purposes that they might find useful. So yeah, we just wanted to kind of share some strategies with you all for doing that work.
So we do have this QR code that points to a survey. So if you're interested in learning more about Borderland Shakespeare, or you have ideas about what kind of resources or frameworks might be helpful for you in the classroom, or just want to connect in any way, we encourage you to please go out and fill out this survey. We would love to hear from you, to work together, and to create resources that would be helpful for our students and educating teachers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I also have postcards if you would like more information about them.
Yeah, we can cut them out.
Please do hand them out. The artwork is by Chicana visual artist again.
Yes, Celeste de Luna.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
We talked about possibly having a visual arts exhibit as well at the Latino bookstore when we present there. And then I think it's so cool to be able to come at all these issues from different angles. I do want to let you know too that there is you've got some of these cards. They have a cute code for Alma. Speaking of disenfranchised, Houston does not have a brand new state-of-the-art Latino Arts Cultural Center. We have Mecca and TBH, which are repurposed facilities So Mecca is a 100-year-old repurposed school. We need something that has new facilities to honor them as well. This survey will ask your insights into some of those components, and we're working on that right now. And Mark has been helping us pass that around, so thank you very much. Right now I want to bring up Juan Tejeda. He is the publisher at Slam Libra Press with his wife. And the key part there is, again, we can create the books that lead with our community. We've had him here in Houston at Nuestra Palabra when he published the book by Aluista at Casa Ramirez. If you haven't been there, it's in the Heights on 19th Street, folk art, fine art. And then at the Latino bookstore, the last time we got to work with him was for La Quinta Soledad, a novel by Silviana Wood, whose plays were also presented there. So he's got some new works to tell you about, and he's got his exhibit there, including the cool Aztec calendar coloring book, which is cool. So please welcome Juan Tejeda.
Yeah, thank you. You can also look up aslalibrepress.com, the website. Kind of a low-tech, poly-tech here, but
Need some help?
yeah. How do you get to the internet here?
Keyboard.
aslalibrepress.com. So, I didn't know I was going to be speaking here today. But Tony invited me, and I wasn't even sure I was coming to the conference till the very last minute, but I'm glad to be here. All of us, Tony and Somos Mas Mexican American Studies at San Antonio, we started this Mas Summit 8 years ago, and it was very successful. In a lot of ways, there were different times, but in a lot of ways they were pretty much similar to the times that exist today. Right before the first summit, we were in this battle with the Texas State Board of Education just to get one Mexican American Studies class for high school students. They changed the narrative on us and decided to say, look, before we get a class, let's get a textbook. Remember that? And they've talked about it today in the history. So the only textbook that was submitted was by a former Texas State Board of Education member. I forget her name right now. And it was a very racist textbook. So we went into, battle mode against this racist textbook. And right before the first summit, so it was a hot topic of conversation. Now, 8 years later, by the way, we won that battle. And the board, which was Republican majority of 10 Republicans and 5 Democrats, they voted unanimously to reject that racist textbook. That led then, I think that was like in 2016, 2017, then to finally in 2018, after about 4 or 5 years that we've been protesting and going before the Texas State Board of Education, led to finally getting approval of the first Mexican American Studies class elective course for high school students. That then led to a couple of years later, the first African American Studies course that the people in Dallas, Fort Worth kind of spearheaded, modeled on the Mexican American Studies course, and got approved by the State Board of Education, which has led then to subsequent American Indian / Native Studies course that is in right now being taught at certain school districts and is going to be submitted for approval by Texas State Board of Education. And I believe there's also an Asian Pacific Islander course that's in development. So some very important and historic things have happened during this time. Of course, the pandemic hit, and there was 3-4 years that this conference went virtual. but it continued for the past three years or so. And this is the first time that we're back in person in 4 years since the pandemic. I mention these things because we're no strangers to fighting for our basic rights, fighting against racism, fighting against the state violence, fighting against the banning of our books, of our history. We've been excluded all of these years. This has been a battle that's been ongoing here on this continent for over 500 years, since the arrival of the European, first the Spanish, via, the Caribbean and Mexico, and then the pilgrims from the 13 colonies. What I want to do right now is just kind of give a plug for they're banning our books again. They're continue to exclude us from the curriculum and textbooks in schools from pre-K to 12 for the most part. And that's not just Chicanos and Latinos, that's African Americans, any of the people of color. And of course, pretty vicious right now against the LGBTQ plus community. So all we can do is continue fighting, continue struggling. I want to put a plug in, as I was going to say, for the importance of our own cultural arts institutions in our communities. I think that, Tony mentioned the Latino bookstore at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. I worked at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center for the first 18 years of its existence as the Chicano Music Program Director. We built that organization up over the course of those 18 years to one of the premier Chicano community-based organizations in the nation that served as a model, and we broke many barriers. And that cultural arts organizations, for the last 50 years, in all of our communities, we got Chicano studies as a result of the civil rights movement. We got African American studies, women's studies, and a lot of these cultural arts institutions then developed in communities throughout the United States. And these institutions have played a very important role in our communities, because while the schools were not teaching us, Chicano studies about our history, our culture, our arts, or African American studies, or Asian, other people of color, indigenous studies, these institutions that we developed, and most of them were very community-based, so that they were, developed by our own people, played the role of really preserving our culture, our language, our history, and teaching, educational role also, our history and the arts, and served as developing important spaces for the creation of our arts and culture, including food, dance, music, literature, drama, like the Guadalupe does, and other cultural institutions, during all this time that the schools weren't doing it. So I think that cultural arts institutions have gone overlooked throughout history, and the important role that they have played in our communities and continue to play. And that's one of the reasons why my wife and I started Aslan Libre Press, because we know that the publishing industry that's governed by the big 5 or 6 out of New York doesn't publish very many indigenous or Chicano Latino voices. So we've had to turn to our own institutions, our own independent institutions and cultural arts institutions, and organizations like, some would say, like me and my wife, we are Aslan Libre Press, mom and pop little, we published 15 books that probably otherwise may have not gotten published. So it's very important that, yes, we have to hold the state accountable, right? We have to hold our schools accountable. We have to hold our politicians accountable. but at the same time, we have to develop our own independent organizations and institutions and publishing houses like Aslan Libre Press, like Flower Song Press in Valle, and other independent institutions to publish our own people and continue that push for better representation in our school curriculum, school textbooks, and in our communities, right? We gotta hold them accountable in the media for telling our stories, right? But if they don't do it, we have to continue doing it ourselves, right? We can't sit back and say, well, they're not doing it, you know, and then kind of, you know, just let it go at that. No, we have to hold them accountable, but at the same time, continue telling our own stories in our own ways and with our own independent institutions. So briefly, that's all I have to say. I hope that you, as you go back into your own communities, advocate for ethnic studies in our schools, hold our elected representative school boards accountable. Hopefully you can make presentations to the school boards and say these ethnic studies courses are important because they help our students succeed, especially in a state like Texas, where 73% are people of color in our schools, 5.4 or 5.5 million. And at the same time, continue developing our own projects, our own institutions, and supporting them to provide that very important role in the work that they're doing within our communities. Continue doing and advocating for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that very much. Along those quick same lines, I just want to add when you talk about commercial publishing, there is not an actual Latino market in corporate publishing. And if there is one, they should not create it because basically they are illiterate about Latinos. We should create what that means. One answer to that is the Latino bookstore. I just want to say quickly, if the Latino bookstore, which is part of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center, director is Cristina Bailly, if that followed corporate models, it would not open a bookstore in the middle of the west side of San Antonio. Because all the corporate indicators say, don't go there. It's the poorest zip code I hear in Texas. It's predominantly Mexican American, predominantly folks of lower socioeconomic means. A bookstore will not go there. That's exactly where the Latino bookstore is. So we're defining what that means from a community level, which is everything that we're doing, which is, I think as Juan was hinting at, that's political right now. Political right now because we are empowering each other. I do want to mention two of the other founders of the Lucha movement, Ryan Paras and Nina Lopez, right there in the back of the room. They are the founders of the movement. And I do want to empower the youth. On that note, Nuestra Palabra has been around for 25 years. One of the writers we worked with was Maria Elena Cortez, who's a fantastic writer and educator, visual artist. She wrote a book, My Annoying Little Brother, about her baby boy and his sister. Well, that baby boy is now a young man. That's Mark Sedgwick. He's second generation Nuestra Palabra, and he's got a book that he wrote and shared. I want him to talk about it. Why? Because we've got to empower the youth to not to share their voice, to learn how to move it. And he's here working right now. He's working getting the survey out, creating the survey, and he helps with our exhibit. So please welcome Mark Sedgwick.
So, I also didn't know I was going to come up and speak today, but I said, hey, Tony, you're going to go to the second session and go continue speaking? He's like, yeah. I'm like, can I go? He's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go sit there and watch. And he says, and then I hear him talking like to somebody. He's like, oh, yeah, Mark's going to come and speak. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to go. Oh, you wanted me to go speak? All right, sure. So I'm sitting here listening to you guys and trying to think, what kind of value, what can I be speaking about that can, add some value to your day and be practical? So let's start from the beginning though before I get to any of that stuff. So my ancestors on my mom's side, Maria Elena Cortez's side, the Cortezes, yeah. They were farmers in Mexico, in Cuernavaca, Mexico, which I'll actually be visiting there in like a few weeks. For the first time since I was like a little boy, like 3 years old. the last time I went. And so it'd be really cool to go back and see my cousins and my ancestors and my uncles and aunts over there, who I connect with through FaceTime and stuff. But it's not the same as being in person with somebody. COVID was hard because you were held back from that communication. Look at somebody in their eye and really connecting with somebody. And anyways, so my grandma was one of the biggest impactors of not only my mom's life, but my life. One of the biggest shapers. She introduced me to lots of good things. She made us fresh fruits, fresh smoothies, fresh food as a little boy. So I was raised really well nourished. And those traditions came from her ancestors, the ones who lived on the farm, her mom and dad. And she helped raise all of her siblings as a little boy. And so she had lots of good practice. So I was like, later, after she had already had a lot of practice, I was really blessed with that, upbringing and those foundations. Those foundations can really build a person, and they really have built me to who I am today. And so my mom and dad got divorced when I was like not even 1 year old, I don't think. And so what ended up being, my mom was a 26-year teacher, not at the time, of course, because I was a little baby, and she was barely in the beginning of her journey with teaching. But so she was gone teaching in her first couple years, and my grandma would take care of us, as I already mentioned. And she would read me stories from the Bible as a little kid. So she was just filling my head up with good messages, lots of good messages, and a lot of love, too. A lot of love. That was really big. And then, fast forward a few years, my sister is my older sister. She's born, and she's like, "Mom, I want to send that boy back. I don't want to have to share the gifts. I want to share my parents. I don't have to share all this love. I want all the time, and I want to be the princess. Don't send him back to Walmart where he came from." And so my mom said, "No, I'm not going to send him back. If I send him back, you're going back too." She's like, "Please don't send me back, please." And so my mom looked all over the libraries, trying to find her school library, looking for some way she could find a tool or a book that could connect and really get this message across that you need to love your brother. This isn't going to be the way to having a good life, is to just want to get him out of here, push him out of your room, and that's not the way. So she wrote this book called My Young Little Brother to be the answer, be the solution, create the solution to that problem. And me and my sister have been great friends. And she's moving away this Monday. I almost cried. She's moving away to do physical therapy. She just got her doctorates. And so she's going to San Antonio with her boyfriend because he got a really good opportunity. And she now got a really good opportunity. And so really great blessings there. Continuing to march on the path and progress towards what the journey's calling us to. So that's really good. And fast forward a few more years in that story I'm telling. My mom gets breast cancer after being, a teacher for many years and presenting and doing author visits and doing amazing things, bringing me and my sister along the way, and going and doing things with Nuestra Palabra and Tony Diaz, and I got to see some of you guys in the back, as a little boy looking up to you guys. So good influence from and lots of leadership, lots of people speaking out in my upbringing, and I got to see that and the power that had. That was really powerful. As a kid, I wasn't so receptive to it because I was a little bit like, wow, just sitting here listening to people talk and stuff. But subconsciously, those messages were getting in, and I was an energetic kid. I was getting in trouble in school a lot because I had so much energy. They wanted to diagnose me for like ADHD and stuff, but my mom's like, no, we're not going to put you on medication. I just think you're a high energy kid, so I'm going to put you in sports instead. So that's what she did. And I did really get to track and cross country, and I play a lot of basketball. I'm like active every day. Like after this, I'm probably going to go exercise or something.
It's too long.
I can't sit too long. But yeah, so all that troublemaking was then solved from the 5th grade. Then in about 7th grade, I started figuring it out, finding those outlets, finding those sports. And also realizing that interrupting the teacher because I want to tell a joke is not the right way to do it. So I realized that writing was another good source as well to express myself. And so, I was talking about my mom and her breast cancer. So she had breast cancer in 2018. You know, like I said, we were watching her all these years, and she maintained a positive attitude through that breast cancer. And I was watching that, and I was very impressed, and her faith gave me faith. I hardly had any fear. I don't remember one time having fear that my mom was going to pass away. First off, we caught it early. That's a blessing. Second off, she got a double mastectomy, and it was all successful. Yes, she had a lot of scar tissue and lots of recovery things going on, but she always maintained that strong, positive mind, that faith. You know, even when it would go down, sometimes she would struggle, be tired, and be sometimes angry, but you know, she would always maybe apologize for being angry, or show up the next day and just be a light, let that light shine within her. And then she survived and overcame. She got invited onto this radio show to host a radio show that she ended up calling Brilla con Maria Elena Cortez, which means shine with Maria Elena Cortez. And she's like, hey, Mark, I know you've been studying all these people and writing down these positive quotes, and you're making a book. I want you to come and share one of your positive quotes to introduce my show. And I said, sure, I'll do that. Her guest didn't show up. She's like, Mark, I need you to be my guest today. She's like, talk about being my little brother and how that impacted you. Okay, all right. So I show up, and it turns out really good. Like, we talk about a lot of good stuff, and it's a great show. She turns me into the co-host of it, calls it Shine with Maria and Mark. And now we have a YouTube channel and stuff like that. And I'll go ahead and we're talking about websites. So let me go ahead. So I started working on something with a good friend of mine, childhood friend of mine. And I also learned the power of collaboration through not only you guys, Tony Diaz and everybody. I didn't put the S in let's. So, you know, growing up, I got to see what collaboration looked like, you know, with my mom and all the people she would team up with. And I saw the power of that. So this is just a little demo to what that looks like. I want to be a children's book author. We're still doing the YouTube channel and still interviewing. And by the way, Tony, my mom and I were just texting. She's like, hey, we're going to do a book signing. And I'm like, why don't we do a podcast and a book signing on the same day, you know? And I said, she said, who do you want to invite? I said, well, you know, I've been working with Tony Diaz a lot. What if we invite Tony Diaz? So I'll talk to you about that later. But I ended up creating this Shine notebook in inspiration of everything that my mom and my grandma and all the people have taught in my life, the good teachers and mentors, the good coaches along the way. I've collected all these success principles and encouraging messages of hope, and I put them all in a notebook. That's what this is. So it's just a tool, right? And I made it on Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. So I self-published it. I just wanted to make something quick, but powerful and profound. So I found out that Amazon Kindle, you can like publish your own stuff, and it's very simple. So, you know, for whoever wants to write a book, like something quick, and you don't want to maybe go through a publisher, that's something real simple. Practical advice for you guys out there on the streams. But yeah, so we're still marching on the mission. You know, I thank you guys for planting seeds, and you know, I'm so glad we're still working together. And it's like new trajectory of my life. I'm about to be a PE coach. I'm about to graduate from college. We'll be a PE coach at an elementary school coming soon. So I'm excited for that. And I got a children's book, my own children's book. You know, that was the quick and simple tool. But now I want to create a children's book and follow my mom's footsteps in a bigger way. And you know, we get discouraged along the way. People doubt us. People criticize us. Sometimes it hurts, you know, especially from the people that we love. But, you know, for example, that wonderful lady, my grandma, Teresa, that I was talking about, she told my mom this, you know, because my mom shares this now, so I'll share it too. She said, my grandma told my mom when she finished her book, are you serious? This little simple children's book took you like 2 years of your life? That hurt my mom. Ouch. Yes, it did. It did take me 2 years. Yeah, I'm a teacher. You know, I'm balancing a lot of things. And so my mom forgave her, you know, and you know, over the years, my grandma was like, wow, that is actually a good book. So, you know, you change your mind, but if she would have let her, like, all right, maybe, what am I wasting my time for? Forget about this book. She didn't give up. So, you know, whatever you're called to, you know, especially the good things that you're called to, you know, stick with it. Don't lose hope. Don't let the naysayers, even especially if they're the ones you love, to bring you down. You know, keep on marching on that mission. And I will too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Good job. I think you rehearsed that.
I'll talk a little bit here.
Well, and we've got about 15 minutes left. I want to hear from folks' reactions, but I do want to just add this. So I do teach at Lone Star College, Houston North, and I love teaching. And I tell my students, I don't do any job I don't want. I'm a bilingual Chicano. I'm in demand. And I also tell them when I'm in the classroom, I don't play. What I'm about to teach you, Aristotle taught Alexander the Great what I'm about to teach you. This was once just for the great people who will lead. That's you now. And all my students, I can put it. Let me put it very politically, or very genteelly. My students are predominantly Latino and African American. I teach at Lone Star College. I may have 3 Anglo students a year. That's just sheer facts. And when I see someone young walk through my classroom, I'm like, I know they got energy, and they got talent. Can't wait for me in this classroom. And I want to hear what they have to share. For a lot of the reasons you just mentioned, all our lives, we're being told no, we get mad. Where does that energy go? Right? This literature is a great way to avoid all these other crises. It's fun and cool. But again, I think I'm like all of you and everyone who came to this conference today, we know our youth are capable of great things. Now we just have to help them on a daily basis and then influence the system around us, which is happening. I want to stop there. Maybe we do like a round robin. If this was Zoom, we'd call it popcorn, I guess. And just get some reactions, maybe a few statements from folks who kind of slayed it in, and we can go around and, I'm vibing. Are you vibing? You spoke earlier today, so thank you.
You're welcome. I'm super vibing. Y'all are so inspirational. I love hearing from all of y'all. I had a question for the person selling the books from Estat Libre, but they're not here right now. But actually, I had another question too. What's in your book? Because you talked a lot about your story. Is that like all that's in there, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's a journal, so it's got like give it your best shot. So it's got the success principles to prove to yourself. Ask more questions. That's a huge one. Kids are scared to ask questions, so it's a stimulative kind of prompt, and then there's also stimulating questions at the bottom, and just a place for a kid to express themselves and gain some hope. Yeah. And the stories at the beginning, though, yeah, like my background and stuff with my mom and yeah.
My name is Yvonne Martinez. I'm actually a parent of 3 teenagers, and I saw this on Facebook. I decided to come because I am somewhat disgusted with our public school system. And one of the things that I'm thinking about doing in the long run, and I'm saying long run because I'm a clinical pharmacist by trade. I work at the VA. But my intentions are actually to start like a Sankofa Saturday school so that more African American and Latino students can actually have a place to come and learn of their history and engage some of those parents. And it's just a matter of me getting started. But I figured they're going to try to pull it out of public schools, like someone was saying earlier. You just do it in your community. Children will always learn from someone if they're willing to teach.
That's awesome. Well, we should talk. We'll be at your service. We should have you on our show, and we should talk too, just to keep, that we're going and getting the books in there. Thanks.
Excuse me. I'm a teacher. I teach criminal justice and misdemeanor studies, and I particularly like the Shakespeare and Borderland. I thought that was something that I can definitely integrate into the curriculum. Figure out a way to do that. And thanks for the link, and that was really helpful.
We'd love to hear from you if you do, or
I did fill out the QR, so.
And which school is that?
Cypress Creek High School.
Oh, very cool. Very close. Very cool. And we'll go to Brian Barnes in the back. High-tech gas tank.
I was getting ready. Yeah, I'm Brian Barras. I think know most folks here, but I started working with Tony right out of college. Your age. I was your age.
Once.
Now I could have 3 kids, but I have none. Leanna and I both met through North Lapalabra, and we've been together for 18 years now. But I do a couple of things, you know, and it's beautiful, like how our community here has sort of supported each other. Because I know I've done work with your mother too on environmental issues. She would come to our festivals and do face painting. She's got so many talents, and and she's like a ray of sunshine. Has always been really, really positive and uplifting, you know, when she's in your presence. Like even her, she's always got flowers in her hair. Everyone knows her. She's got flowers in her hair. But I started volunteering with Tony, and I guess my focus really became using media and the tools, because when I was graduating, the internet was just coming out, and there were all these, you know, this didn't exist. And so I've slowly like started thinking how to do what Tony and others like Tejada have done with the written word with video. That's my passion. And so I did environmental work, but mostly through storytelling with video and photography. Because it's one thing to talk about environmental justice, but if you see it, if you can visualize, you know, refinery right next to a playground, you see the black smoke and the kids outside, it has a different impact on people. And that I did at the same time I was working with Tony, and we were able to use the radio show to be, you know, political, right, and talk about the issues that were happening in the city. In addition to all the incredible authors and poets and writers, you know, it was a really organic space to just have a voice, you know, for once. And you know, at the time radio was still a big deal. You know, podcasts didn't exist. The only way to sort of hear things were on television or in your car. We spent a lot of time in our car here. So it was powerful. And I think you know, it's nice to see the evolution. You know, you publish your own book like that. And no idea, you know, is like too far away from like manifesting, happening, and you just gotta have the will, desire, and you know the energy to put it forward. It's great. I thought you were just getting up to talk like randomly, and you had a whole pitch. Damn.
Yeah.
I'm behind. But yeah, thank you for inviting. And I haven't been to much of this because I got a job 6 years ago, and so I had to back away from all of the volunteer work that I did with Tony. Yeah, so I worked with Sierra Club for 6 years. And I'm about to leave that, and I'm getting excited about what's next.
Yeah.
I had to jump back into my media work.
Once you're libro traficante,
Yeah.
for life, mano.
That's true, and on that note, yeah, I started volunteering in West Oklahoma, I don't know, right before the first book fair that they used to have at the George R. Brown's, like, right after, so like 2004, something like that. And it opened a lot of doors. It helped me find a path to finding out even my own history, which I knew nothing about, thanks to our public schooling. And it really gave me a way to figure out that I didn't have to just get a job, go to work, you know, and that's it. That's, you know, what you do. So my passion is media, visual arts work. I do a lot of that kind of work, social media work. I used to run the radio show, which I really miss. But my past, you know, work has really been environmental justice work or social justice work, education, and my, you know, it's kind of interesting because I used to think, oh, I didn't really, I grew up in burbs, I didn't really have much context outside of that really. And, you know, oh, I'm gonna go help people, I'm gonna frontline communities, I'm gonna, well, yeah, I'm the frontline community. And so the last 12 years, I've been my 4-member family, all 3 of them had cancer. And 2 of them are gone now, but my sister and I went through a stem cell transplant, and she's still here. And so yeah, I'm coming back into it now, and it's exciting for me because those are the stories that I need to tell, and I have the abilities to do that. And that's kind of where I'm at, and I love coming here because right now all the going through the legal therapeutic ethic caravan and fighting the dismantling the MOS program in Tucson, it's super disheartening here to hear all of the stuff that's happening now, all of the fires that are happening along social justice. And it's super depressing, and especially now with our school system being torn apart through, you know, TA now. It's really nice to be in this company to see that the hope is, you know, I've been a little sheltered with COVID, but it's really nice to be here and be able to see that folks are still here, you know, and have that hope. Yeah. So that's it.
Well, we're about 2 minutes left. We'll let Nayeli close us out. In fact, she was kind enough to offer to take notes. So this is your pay.
I'm like, okay, that's a lot. 2 minutes is not a lot. Yeah, I guess I do feel a little overwhelmed right now just speaking because I feel like there's so much that I can touch to and talk about. But one thing two things that stood out to me is Borderlands and seeing how y'all tweet Shakespeare, Shakespeare in the classroom. I know from, first of all, my name is Nayeli. Sorry. My name is Nayeli Hidalgo, and I work with Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services. I'm their education liaison, so I focus more on community engagement and involvement. And I naturally have always been involved in education and had an interest in it. It was always like a huge dream for me to become a teacher. I didn't end up becoming a teacher. I consider myself an informal educator. I spend a lot of time in and outside of the classroom working with students and teachers. So one of my tasks during the last 6 years was like creating different lessons. And so the hardest one for me was always incorporating plays. So teachers would ask me, how do you write plays around the environment? And I'm not a theatrical person. I love the arts, but I'm not more of a mixed media individual. And then, so whenever we started diving into Shakespeare, me and the teacher would have like long conversations, the English teacher, about like, okay, how can we make this interesting and more culturally relevant and culturally competent for the students so that they can feel like they're involved in their culture. So I work with a lot of students, 9 to 12, that are first comers into the U.S. So yes, we have a large population of Mexicanos, but we also have Nigerians and Salvadorians that come in. So even within that intricate mix of full of students that we have, it was very hard to bring in all those nationalities and those different experiences into just one play. So it's now I have this as an example. Like look at this, and then like learn from them or other people are doing in Texas. So I'm really excited to be able to take that back and share that with the teachers. Again, I didn't realize how much of a role. I mean, I know teachers in general do have a huge role in our communities, but how much a barrier it becomes if they're not culturally competent, but they're also wanting to learn and engage with communities that they're not really well aware of. So it's like another added layer of education. This is the teacher, the facilitator. Like you shouldn't dive into these horrific stories, or you shouldn't do this because it's not the most appropriate way to tackle certain lessons. Again, it's part of learning and working with each other. Then another thing I was going to say, yeah, I mean, I've been involved in, I guess, many phases and then just engaged in different ways. I started engaging with the ethnic studies, Texas ethnic studies of Texas, and I was actually there in the 2018, whenever they were first writing the courses for African American studies. I actually drove out to the Capitol to also provide different feedback on the TEECs. And part of the work with their house is that we provided recommendations for African American environmental leaders to be incorporated into the textbooks around like environmental justice issues and environmental teachings. So I was there with a couple of leaders like from Dallas and different parts of Texas, providing feedback as needed. And and also been engaged with Leanna and Ryan in different areas. I know their parents, along with Ryan, different other people, helped create it and co-founded Tejas, which is located right now in Houston, and also focus on environmental justice. But yeah, I'm here as an ally, as a supporter, wherever I can be, in whatever capacity. But I'll be around. You'll see me in different spaces depending on like what hat I'm wearing. Overall, I just love the environment. I love the arts and can support culture, food, and community whenever I can. Thank you.
Awesome.
Let me add something, so it's just like a complete circle. So Tejas, we started Tejas at the same time, pretty much the Nuestra Palabra was starting. We didn't get our official papeles till 2006, but we were organizing. And FERB, that's the school that she's at, that she's referring to. That's a school that we were very heavily present in through Nuestra Palabra too. And you know, they had some badass teachers that incorporated a lot of the writers, you know, and invited us to take them. So it years later, you know, when we're fighting Tucson, they actually have a really, really big program to support ethnic studies and have these events to support banned books. And eventually, the same school ends up applying for a grant from Steve Jobs' wife, I forget her name.
Mackenzie.
No, not Simpsons.
Lorraine.
Anyway, they get a huge grant and become the first like environmental justice high school, millions of dollars, and now you know they have partnered with Tejas, and they've all built like you know the same work, like whether they know it or not, that what's happening with ethnic studies and all the books. Like I know we stocked their library. With awesome books. You know it has grown at the same time together, and it's a model now. That school is a model for so many other schools, and not just for what they're doing, but the relationship that they have, right? You called about collaboration, but the collaboration with organizations outside the school and these partnerships with, you know, what did you call them kind of teachers? Informal teachers. You know, that's a really good support network. I think we're all informal teachers too, right? In our communities, even if we're formal teachers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to close that loop because I didn't expect Natalie to be here. It's really cool.
Oh, I thought you all, no. That's pretty cool.
Because one of our other employers, Vida, is married to Orlando, and he's a big scholar, and also what did he do for
He was an intern for Nuestra Palabra. He did our first website.
Wow!
And I think I said something like, "That's a fad." I think we need one fine. So.
That sounds about right.
But yeah, small circles. Like if you like really have a grounded community organization, just like the hell I was saying right about Axon Press and Guadalupe Cultural Theater. Like these things, they start out very small. It takes 20 years to build, but like we're seeing the fruits of what that has done to the community, and it'll only expand even larger, right? So start that Sankofa school Saturdays, like.
And let us know, because I would love to do that. I would love to help learn those histories.
Cool. Well, wonderful. I wish we had another 3 hours. Thank you so much. We're going to reconvene in the foyer for the debrief and the raffle. And thank you again.